G'day, K McCosker from the Queensland Department of Ag and Fisheries. I work in the paddock to reef program, and I'm talking today about minimising sediment loss from farms. I'm no expert on all of these things or any of these things, but have been working in the space for a while, so I'll try and provide an overview of the most important bits in 10 minutes. So some principles to start us off. Soil's got a natural inherent structure and it's most resistant to erosion when it's in that state. The major role of vegetation, which can be crop, is to physically hold it together and to protect it from rainfall and runoff. Apart from vegetation effects though, we can make soil more vulnerable to erosion through things that increase runoff, especially tillage and compaction. Every situation is different when it comes to erosion. The erosivity of soil, the rainfall, the slope, the cover in place, they all matter. So people often think about the grazing industry when we talk about sediment, and it's true that most of the sediment comes from grazing lands. This is no surprise given that the vast majority of the land is under a grazing land use. However, it's important to note that cropping land uses typically have much higher erosion rates. So what we're looking at here are a couple of experimental sites where erosion rates from cropping and grazing were directly compared. The Central Queensland site is relatively low rainfall, low slope. Note the erosion rates though were about a 10-fold increase going from pasture to grain cropping. At the North Queensland site, there's more slope and a lot more rainfall, so more erosion is expected, but the erosion rates from pasture are a lot lower than from the cropped land. And you can see the massive differences between traditional high disturbance cultivation regime, which will result in bare ground, and the reduced tillage regimes in the pasture. So generally in grazing systems, we're talking about erosion rates that are usually measured in kilos per hectare, and in cropping systems, we're usually working in tonnes per hectare. So just touching on hill slope erosion from grazed pastures. The most important longer term aim is to maintain land in good condition because this corresponds with low runoff and soil loss. So if you're doing assessments of land condition and you're not seeing the majority of your sites come back as A, then you're measuring a decline in potential productivity and increased erosion risk. Research indicates that much of the soil loss from pastures is from the relatively small areas of deconditioned land like scalds and from the poor conditioned land, so the stuff in C condition. They punch well above their weight. Also, it takes a long time and lots of careful effort to regenerate land that is in poor condition, so it makes sense to focus on actions that maintain good condition. Research indicates the most important thing for maintaining condition and minimising erosion is to keep pasture utilisation rates at less than 30% of what's there. There's some evidence that higher utilisation rates can be okay provided pastures are rested adequately during the early wet season. So this management goal of less than 30% utilisation can be achieved through different grazing systems and varying management sophistication. Something that's sometimes overlooked though is that it's equally important to have highly efficient breeder herds, and most of our commercial grazing businesses do rely on breeder herds. You can't expect optimal use of pastures from a herd with low productivity. So as an example, if I need 500 weaners per year to make ends meet in my business, and I have to carry 1,000 females to achieve that, then there's quite a lot of scope for me to reduce overall numbers and therefore stocking rate if I can get those 500 weaners from 750 cows. So it's reasonable for us to target our extension and capacity building programs, at least in part, at the things that improve herd productivity, such as breeder nutrition and animal health, etc. Because we're not going to get to optimal pasture utilisation without working on those things. So this is a brief look at some measured erosion under different utilisation rates. This experiment was on a fairly erosive soil in central Queensland with a bit of slope. And the thing I want to make note of is that as the grazing pressure increases, so too does the runoff increase, and the runoff drives the soil erosion. So 75% utilisation is pushing it pretty hard, but you will find that out in the real world, and particularly at successive dry seasons. And I'd just say look at how much the erosion rate increases as utilisation rate increases. Can't spend much time on Streambank, but it's a very important contributor in many locations. Streambanks are more vulnerable to erosion when the cover's low, and this can happen during the dry or during the drought when the cattle are around this better country more often. The main tool we have is to very carefully manage the grazing of frontages, aiming for the same utilisation rates that apply for any other country. This has helped along a lot by fencing so that you can control stock access. But if the only water stock can get to is in streams, then obviously we have to accept that there's going to be a degree of impact. So the other important management tool is off-stream watering points. In cropping systems where the erosion rates are higher, we have to focus on things that maximise rainfall infiltration and minimise runoff. Number one is reducing the number and severity of tillage operations, especially in the most vulnerable times. And the most vulnerable time is usually the fallow period or the gap between crops. Ideally, we keep crop residues in the form of trash and dead intact stems from previous crops right there in the paddock. One of the main reasons for tillage is weed control, so reducing tillage means we need to rely on herbicides for much of our weed control, and there's no way around that. It also means having planting equipment that can operate in trash and doesn't need a fine tilth to place seed where it needs to be. So reducing tillage does help a lot to maximise infiltration, but the other big factor is soil compaction from farm machinery. And there we're talking about controlled traffic systems, so having big parts of the paddock that are never touched by the machines. Livestock also cause severe compaction, and for this reason many farmers won't let cattle onto cultivation unless they really have to, unless they're really stuck for feed and they need them to graze crop stubble. Here's a couple of quick examples of the extent of runoff and erosion under different tillage systems. There's two examples here of different production systems on different soils, different rainfall, different slopes. It's not about the crop that's grown, it's about the situation it's in. In the high slope location with pineapples, there's dramatic reduction in erosion when the tillage is reduced and the inner rows are mulched. And you can see the runoff drops a lot and the erosion drops a hell of a lot more. In the grain farming system, that's a location on a fairly erosive soil, but a smaller slope, lower rainfall. Still, zero-till farming is resulting in about a third of the erosion that you get under a conventional tillage regime. So this example here is showing 3 sites in the wet tropics that were chosen for these experiments because they're high slope. So it's not about sugarcane, it's about the slope. The orange bars here show the erosion rates in ratoon cane that was burnt before harvest with the remaining trash later burnt, and cultivation for in-crop weed control until the cane closed in and machines can't get in anymore. The blue bars better represent the way cane's grown today, with green cane harvesting, the trash on the ground in a thick layer of cover, no tillage for weed control. Instead, we're relying on herbicides for weed control. And there's a dramatic difference. And the point here is that even in these situations, like a wet environment, lots of slope, where you'd expect to see a lot of erosion and do, some fairly simple management practice changes can have a really dramatic difference. So controlled traffic farming is important because it enables other important operations which are improved with more precise driving of machines. There's many experiments in many cropping systems that document improvement in operating efficiency, which is often a reason enough in itself for people to get into controlled traffic. There's documented reduction in compaction damage, reduction in runoff erosion, even in the absence of tillage reduction. So the study I've referred to here is from a site near Mackay, where they found around 40% reductions in both runoff and the soil loss in sugarcane when compared to the conventional practice in the same spot. Infrastructure. Contour banks do prevent erosion, and they do it largely through reducing the length of slopes, so runoff doesn't achieve the same velocity and volume as it runs downhill. They also deliver that runoff to areas where it won't do as much damage, like a grassed waterway. However, in big events, bank size is sometimes not sufficient to stop runoff going right over the top or just cutting right through the bank, and in these situations you can still have some pretty severe erosion. The important things to look at there are they in place, are they adequately maintained, are they close enough together? for the events that you are trying to control. Sediment traps. Sediment traps can be useful, but don't think they can replace the need to maintain cover and reduce tillage. A sediment trap is, after all, trying to reduce the loss of soil that's already eroded. So just have a think about the erosion rates that have been reported in some of these studies, and then think about the size of paddocks and farms and what that would mean for the design of sediment traps that are going to make a difference, and how often you might have to empty those sediment traps out. So I'm saying that infrastructure is an important part. I just believe that there's a hierarchy of actions that you look at implementing on a farm to try and minimise your erosion, and those things start with reducing tillage and maintaining lots of cover. So the last thing I'll mention is that there's this really good source of info in the form of the Science Consensus Statement. You can pick it up off the REEF Plan website. The address is there. The fourth chapter, it's a big unit. The fourth chapter deals with management options and is a really good starting point for anyone wanting to do their own research and start chasing up your own references. Thank you.